Alright, after much deliberation, I've decided what the next film 11 will be in the Silent Movie Marathon 2, and it's one from this double pack that I picked up. I mean, they're all picked up specifically for the marathon, but this one is, I think, one of the last ones I got a couple of weeks ago. I only found out about these two films recently as well. Just to let you know, I mean, I follow this thread on Blu-ray.com, the forums, called Silent Films on Blu-ray. It's this whole post about all the silent films that are available on Blu-ray, and it's fairly up to date. There's some that aren't on there, but most of them are. And I've always seen these on there, and I assumed from their covers that they were like modern day documentaries about, you know, the South Pole or the North Pole and Mount Everest, and I just assumed they were just like, you know, just silent documentary films from modern day. But no, these are silent documentary films from back in the silent era. And I'll get into these in more detail coming up. I was thinking about double billing these, but there's one that I think is going to be a lot more interesting, and that's The Great White Silence. So the one I'm going to go... No, that's The Epic of Everest. The Great White Silence is the one that interests me more than The Epic of Everest, but I'm going to go The Epic of Everest first, so that's going to be the first one I'll watch. And I managed to get this really for a good price, because you get this nice out-of-slip box, which I'm not too interested in. Ordered it from Zavvi. I knew they'd send it in a jiffy bag, and so I thought this might get dented, but I wouldn't really care, because basically you get both releases on the inside, which you can buy separately, and they're exactly the same as the normal editions, only you can buy these for about 10 to 12, 13 pounds each on Amazon or Zavvi. But get the double pack from Zavvi and it's like £13, and then if you always make a new account for Zavvi and use the welcome discount, I got this for like under £12, something like that, so I got both of them for like £6 each, something like that, so it's a great deal, and I can't wait to watch both of them. But I'm going to go with The Epic of Everest first, because I'll get to why I think The Great White Silence sounds a lot more interesting when I get to that film. But for now, I'm going to go with The Epic of Everest. And just before I start watching and turn the camera off, I will say that this is you know, an expedition, you know, the official record of George Mallory's and Sandy Irvine's 1924 expedition to Mount Everest. So this was filmed in the 20s, in 1924, and I just cannot wait to check it out. I've heard that there's a new score on this, which is incredible, and there's an alternate score, the original score recreated by Julie Brown and performed by the Cambridge University Chamber Orchestra. So they have the original score, but apparently the new score is incredible, so I might just go with that, just to see. You know, it's a black and white, it's also tinted, and it is an hour and a half long, so can't wait to dive into it. Just from, oh, look at that, I mean, that is excellent. I love this on the booklet, and I should show more of the booklets really. Maybe I'll put them in afterwards just to kind of show you some of the stuff. This is the booklet from the BFI release. The Epic of Everest is kind of like a poster for the film from the 1924, and if you see there, it says 1 shilling. 1 shilling. That's really cool. Don't know why my hands are shaking. Yeah, awesome. I cannot wait. And there's actually a film coming out this month or next month called Everest, I think. Like a big budget. It's got like Jake Gyllenhaal in it and stuff like that, and I think Josh Brolin, and so I'll be interested to see that film. I like disaster movies, but this is a true documentary from 1924, and that's something I wanted to cover in this marathon, was to cover as many genres as possible, and documentary is one I definitely wanted to include because I'm a big documentary fan and I want to see more from different eras, and so this will be my first, I think, silent documentary. So let's get right on with it, and I think I'll save The Great White Silence for later on in the marathon, because I just got a feeling that one is really going to hook me more than this one. But either way, this could surprise me. I don't know too much about either of them, I just know a bit more about The Great White Silence, and that sounds a bit more substantial than this. Not that I'm saying this isn't substantial, that seems more, it's going to be more impactful to me because of what I know about it. Anyway, The Epic of Everest, let's get on with it. One more thing that I want to mention about Dr. Caligari before we move on is that I've read, when I was kind of looking into the film after I'd watched it last night, that a lot of people seem to think and have theorized and speculated that Dr. Caligari kind of predicted and inspired the Nazis, basically, and Hitler. And I just find that mode of thinking so weird, and maybe there's something to it, and it's over my head, I don't know. People have written books about how it's, you know, it informed what the Nazis would become, and I just wonder if people look into films a bit too much. Maybe that's just me, let me know what you think about that. I just thought that was a bit overboard, but hey, maybe there's something to it. I'm not going to completely shoot it down, but there we go. Coming up next, film 11 of Silent Movie Marathon 2, The Epic of Everest. I'm so ready for this already. Got some nice sugar-free SodaStream Coke here. I got a sandwich, chicken sandwich with an extra piece of bread that's absolutely laced with butter just to clog up my arteries even more. You only live once, right? But yeah, I feel like I shortchanged this film in the previous part of the video. The reason I'm a lot more interested in The Great White Silence here is because The Epic of Everest is a 1924 film that records the 1924 expedition, whereas The Great White Silence is a 1924 film that records the 1910, 1911, 1912 expedition to the South Pole. So this is footage that is well over 100 years old, and I guess just the fact that it's 10 years older than the Epic of Everest makes it even more of a intriguing thing to me. But I mean, just looking at some of the shots of the menu of the Epic of Everest, I cannot wait. I mean, Everest has always really intrigued me and scared me and fascinated me, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is actually probably the first proper film I've seen about it. I'm sure there's plenty of documentaries about Everest, but this will be my first time actually seeing one, and it's the first one pretty much. So yeah, I'm going to carry on watching this. Well, not carry on, I'm going to start watching this even, when we're talking about. I've got another video rendering there on the side, and yeah, this is going to be cool. Just look at that, unbelievable. It doesn't look real, you know, and just imagine the people at the time seeing this, you know, before the age of the internet and before the age of TV, and only just seeing it in pictures, if that, you know. Crazy. Right, let's get on with it, and then I'll reconvene my thoughts later on. Alright, I finished watching The Epic of Everest a few hours ago, and I believe this is actually Ryan Chataway's favourite film of all time, The Epic of Everest. I'm not too sure about that might be unconfirmed. Anyway, really interesting film. The earliest documentary I've now seen, and of course I said earlier, I think I said that this is of course the first documentary about Everest, and I think there was another one before that in 1922, so just goes to show you should never say it's the first of anything, because you'll almost always be proven wrong. But this film is by Captain John Knoll, who went along with the expedition with all the British guys and filmed them and all that kind of stuff, and he got some really great shots. I mean, there's some time-lapse footage in this that just looks just eerie and alien and just crazy, you know. I mean, obviously we've seen like everything now, you know. We've seen all like Planet Earth and the wonders of the world and these glorious high definition, you know, 4K documentaries that show you all the wonders of the world. We've seen it all at this point, you know, except for like the darkest depths of the ocean. We've seen pretty much everything on this planet, and of course the cat's gonna start crying. But just seeing it from the perspective of a camera from, you know, almost 100 years ago, and just I kind of felt like almost a little bit like I knew just a tiny bit of what it would be like in the 20s to see this footage. I mean, I don't know whether they had pictures of Mount Everest back then, they probably did, but to see it that much up close and things like that, and just the way that it was shot, and seeing like there's a brilliant shot near the end of the film where there's kind of a slope, and just beyond it you just see the clouds, you know, almost at the bottom of the screen, and then there's another mountain above that, and then there's other clouds going over, and then like the light is coming in, and the time lapse. It's just breathtaking stuff. The film opens with kind of shots of Everest, appropriately enough, with some intertitles, which are very kind of poetically written and presented, and full of rhetoric, and kind of just gushing over how awesome Mother Nature is and how brilliant and majestic Mount Everest is. And then we cut to this Tibetan town, which I think it said was the highest town in the world in terms of above sea level, and it's like a shanty town. I mean, it's an absolute squalor, and you see all these Tibetans who are being filmed, and you know, the camera's seemingly set up, and they're just kind of looking and smiling and laughing with each other and stuff. And one of the intertitles says, "And this crazy old man, this jolly old fellow, is, you know, he owns nothing but this drum and the rags on his back," you know. And you just see this guy who looks about 150. His face just looks, it's so wrinkled, it's like a map of a mountainous country. And he's tapping away on his drum, and he's got like his hair's dreading at the back. He looks an absolute state, but he looks like he's having a good time. And that's something it's one of those weird things where I see people like that in kind of poverty-stricken situations, or well, I don't know if they are in poverty. I don't know how they eat or how they live, or how they lived back then. I don't know if it's the same now, but to see people in situations like that who live with so much less, but they seem to get so much more out of life, you know. I mean, they're smiling, they seem happy, and it's a kind of smile that you can kind of tell when someone's smiling and there's kind of a pain behind it. They just seem like it's life to them. That was life up there on the, in the Himalayas. And so I just enjoyed seeing them and seeing different parts of life, and I just love that kind of the way it set it up, because it was just showing you, filming them. There it is, just watch them, and then there'd be little intertitles explaining things about the people they met and the village they were at, and they go on this big convoy on the 200-mile trek from this town to Mount Everest, and they got all these yaks and donkeys, and there's this little baby donkey that got born during the trip, and it says in the intertitles that on its first day of life, this donkey walked 23 miles and 16 miles on the second, and it looks like it's dead, right? And this guy's trying to pick it up and put it on its feet, and it is just so tired it can barely move. Like, he has to move the legs to support itself while standing up. And it's kind of sad, but it's kind of almost touching as well in a way. Like, that animal got thrown in at the deep end straight away. What a time to be born during a 200-mile trek. But it was nonetheless, and it was interesting to see all those little bits, and the footage looks great. For the most part, you just wonder at it. For me, like, I'm just so glad that a cameraman was there to capture something like this, and this is more of a historical record than a film, I feel like. And I'll talk about that when I get to the score as well, because the score is very important to the film, I think. But yeah, it's more of a historical document of this 1924 expedition, and I guess, well, I'll get to that in a minute, but you see the slow journey towards Mount Everest, and you see these like buildings up in like the middle of like a mountainside on a cliff face, almost just built into the rock, and it just looks incredible. You know where it's from, hundreds, thousands of years ago, I don't know, but it's just like, you just marvel at it, like, wow. It is a slow moving film. The camera does linger on things a bit too long, but again, you got to look at this from the perspective of it being an historical document. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if John Knoll had a lot of footage that he didn't use, or whether this was everything and he crammed it all in. And I think about the technical details, like how much film did he take? How did he protect the film? Like he's got lugging those cameras around, or one camera. I don't know if he had one or two, whatever. You just think, how did he get that? And even at one point towards the end of the film, he explains in the intertitles that when they're going up the mountain bit by bit by bit, he says that the camera's too heavy to take any much further, so we have to stay here, and the rest of the footage is literally him using a telescopic lens to look up the mountain, look like 3 miles up onto this cliff face, to try and capture a couple of the dots of the men on the expedition kind of just moving along. And I think he said at one point in the intertitles, this is to date like the longest image that's been photographed, in terms of it's 1,000 feet up and 3 miles away, and you can still see them, and it's kind of a technical achievement at the time, I guess you could say. So yeah, I enjoyed the intertitles a lot because they were written very well, but they kind of served the story of what the guys were doing, saying, oh, we found this, we set up camp here, and there was a little lake, so we called it I forget what it's called now, I think Frozen Lake Camp or something like that they call it. There's like Snowfield Camp and Ice Cliff Camp, and they name them and stuff. But then you just see it as well. You'll just drop in just great shots of them walking through like these towers of ice through the mountain. I mean, it's just, at some points I actually thought, it's fake, it just looks fake, And I can't imagine, again, what it would have been like in 1924 to see these images. Just incredible. And the main part of this film is that 2 people died. Actually, a couple of other people died, actually, due to frostbite and just the conditions up there. But there's also, the main kind of thing, I guess, is that the mystery of George Mallory and Sandy Irvine. Now, George Mallory was in his 30s, his late 30s, but Sandy Irvine was in his early 20s. And they both went up to attempt to get to the summit of Mount Everest, and they were about 800 feet away, and they didn't come back down, and no one knows what happened to them. They went to try and find them, but they couldn't find them anywhere, basically. So it's been a source of controversy over the past 90 years or so, whether or not they even reached the summit. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, maybe they fell, maybe they just died of frostbite. Well, 75 years later, they found George Mallory's body, frozen. Absolutely mental. Absolutely mental. Can you imagine that? Someone dying, and their body is found, 3/4 of a century after they died. It just blows my mind, it really does. And apparently the body of Sandy Irvine has still not been found. So very haunting stuff, really. And of course, 1924, I believe that the first man to reach the top of Mount Everest was Sir Edmund Hillary, and that was in the 50s. So again, it's up for debate whether or not they actually got to the top. I don't think they did, and I think they did perish. Again, just short of 800 feet short of the actual summit itself. But it's really, I mean, you see them moving towards the mountain, and you see like these great shots as they're getting closer and closer, and just mountains everywhere, ice everywhere and stuff. And then the intertitles are like, right, we set up a camp at 7,000 feet, or 10,000 feet, now 20,000, 21,000 feet, 22,000. All these camps, they have to set up, they have to stop, and then like go ahead, set up a camp, then go back, and then get the equipment, and they're going. It's just such an undertaking, you know. And they were just doing it for the sheer kind of the adventure, and also I guess to stake their claim as being the first people to do it. And that theme runs through the intertitles, the writing. I guess like throughout the whole writing of the intertitles is, you know, I'm guessing obviously that Captain John Noel was writing these because it's his film, he filmed it and he presented it, but like he's talking about how, you know, man conquering nature, and nature kind of being bigger and more eternal than man. Like, and I really like that stuff, because I kind of agree with a lot of it, because I find the whole idea of exploration and going out there and doing something that no one else has ever done in terms of exploration, I find really exciting and interesting and vital to humanity in a way. And I guess the next big step for us is Mars, you know. And then after that, I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine anything else. Like, what, one of Jupiter's moons? I mean, I don't know. It just keeps going on. It got to the point where we went to the moon. We went to the moon, you know. That is just ridiculous. But I just think of those people back in like hundreds of years ago, when no one really knew what the whole world was, or where everything was, and finding new, you know, the new countries and new ground and new places. I just find that so exciting, you know. And the fact that we know everything now is almost a little bit of a shame, you know. But back then, you know, and within, you know, the past few generations of our lifetimes, you know, that kind of stuff was still going on with this, and I really, really like that. But some of the things he said in the intertitles, I was a bit, you know. There's a bit where he shows some of the locals in Tibet playing music, very, you know, very crude instruments that they've made and stuff, and he writes, you couldn't exactly call them a musical race, but maybe a few of them wouldn't be out of place in one of our orchestras. I found that to be very kind of condescending, and like, you know, you can't call them a musical race, you know, and that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, just because their equipment wasn't very good or whatever. And I mean, you know, you do what you can in those situations, but. And they have all these people kind of like lugging around their equipment and stuff, and one of the guys gets very exhausted, and so one of the people that they brought along, the people who move all the stuff throughout the expedition, were just carrying the British guy around on his shoulders, and I just thought, like, I don't know, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. But then again, he probably was at death's door at that point. I mean, they were the extreme conditions, you know. They really were risking their lives, and you know, some people lost their lives on this trip, on this expedition. I believe George Mallory had tried to go up there before as well, and so this wasn't his first kind of war with Everest, which he ultimately ended up losing. And yeah, anything else I can talk about really in terms of just the story itself? I love there's a shot here on the back of the Blu-ray of all the crew gathering to kind of have their picture taken for the film, if the camera will focus. They're kind of just all kind of like jostling for position and kind of just standing there looking at the camera and kind of talking amongst themselves. And it reminded me of those old time pictures you see of like, you know, groups, but you're seeing them moving. You're seeing it as a film clip, and I just found that really interesting. Just like whenever I see a picture from like 100 years ago, or whatever, I think like, what was the story behind that? You know, what were they doing just before that, just after that? And you kind of get to see that here when he's filming the group portrait kind of thing. I really like that. But it's definitely far removed. It's quite vacant from the actual people who are on the expedition. Like Mallory and Irvine, I don't think we even get a full-up shot of their face. There's a couple of close-ups of some of the other people on the crew. Apart from that though, you really don't see much in terms of close-up of any of the people. It's mainly the people from Tibet, the Tibetans, and they even note that there's a woman who's helping them up Mount Everest, and she's carrying the same load as her husband, and you see a little shot of her. It's pretty cool. But you know, really, it's far away shots, and you're just seeing them walk and traverse through these, you know, this extreme environment, and more just capturing the scope of it more than the intimate details of the people who were on the mission. So I didn't feel too connected with them. But again, this isn't a work of fiction; it is a historical document, and I don't know, it was I almost liked the way it was quite vacant. You know, I would have preferred a more personal, intimate look at the people who were on the expedition, but I liked the way that it was kind of set back and just kind of showed you just the broad strokes of it. You know. Now the music. There's two choices of score. There is the Simon Fisher Turner score, which was composed, I think, in the past couple of years, and then there's an alternative score presented on the Blu-ray. It's the original 1924 score recreated. So they basically tried to recreate as best they possibly could the score that was used as when the film came out and John Knoll released it and so on. And it's not exactly accurate. They say that it's not really synchronized to exactly what they saw in the 1920s when this was released, but it's pretty much as faithful as a representation of it that you can get, basically. And I don't know, because people have said that the Simon Fisher Turner score is incredible. It's kind of electronic and stuff, I think. And I listened to it at the beginning of the film, and I just didn't. It had like this kind of like chanting, like a little village, like hey, oh, hey, oh, and like clanging and stuff, and it didn't feel right to me. So I went to the alternate score, the original score, and for the sake of purity, I listened to that. And I don't think it's really composed of anything original, but John Knoll got loads of kind of classical pieces and put them together. There's a list in the back here. There's actually a lot in the booklet about the restored original score. And there's one in particular that I am sure I recognised. Some of it was composed by, I mean, there's some stuff that's composed by a guy who was on the actual expedition of this film, Somerville. So maybe it's just it's kind of a big mix. Here we go. Night on a Bear Mountain. I thought it was Night on Bald Mountain. Maybe I'm getting that mixed up. But if you've seen Fantasia, I think it's the scene with the big devil looking over the town. The dun 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 dun. That one, you should recognise that. And when that was used, it was like, holy shit! Like, and you see in this Mount Everest, and you're like, fuck! Like, that was epic. You know, it was fitting. And I flicked back and forth, but the thing was, you can't change the score while you're watching the film. If you change the score, it sets you back to the beginning of the film, which is really stupid. I mean, really, Blu-ray, you can't branch that seamlessly. That was a shame, but I kind of skimmed through, and honestly, I think I just prefer the original score. It's more orchestral and more traditional and fitting, I think, to it, and the fact that it was played, you know, pretty much when the film came out, that kind of music. Well, I guess most of it is music that was used when the film came out, but I mean, you know, it's not completely accurate in terms of placement throughout the film, I think. But anyway, I just prefer that a lot more than what I heard from the Simon Fisher Turner score, but one day I would like to listen to it, just to give it a shot. So anything else I can add? There's some tinting of the film, not too much. Really, it's just about seeing the wonder of it, and it does get slow and boring at times. My tension was waning a little bit, you know, but overall, when it got to the end, it was a powerful film, because it recorded this moment in time that was, you know, this great expedition, and it didn't end very well. And it is a fitting tribute to the guys, because a lot of time is spent kind of just eulogizing them in a way, both from, you know, the shot of I guess some of the Tibetan people who came with them. They go up to where Mallory and Irvine were last seen, and they signal whether life or death, and they put 6 blankets down. It's a sign of a cross. It means death. So, you know, and you just get like just very long shots of kind of their packing up, leaving, you know, building a rock kind of memorial for them, and then you get to see like portraits of them, the still portraits on the screen, and you know, a very nice tribute. And then the film ends with a couple of fantastic time-lapse shots of shadows slowly moving up the mountain, and you got this, like, you know, the clouds are flying over the summit like it's a volcano, and then the shadows just coming in like the creeping death, you know, and then the film ends, and it's just, yeah, really, really powerful ending for me, and powerful film in general, just about, you know, man's exploration, man's need to explore and stake his claim, and how that can sometimes end up, you know, killing him. And it's even before they go to the mountain, they meet with these not actual lamas, but I guess a little group called lamas or something like that. These kind of wise people they meet on the way through the Himalayas, I guess, and they ask them, you know, will we be granted safe passage? And they say, no, you won't, and you shouldn't be messing with, you know, because the people in Tibet and Himalayas and around Nepal, China, wherever, they kind of see Mount Everest, or they did at the time of this film, as kind of this spiritual thing, and I forget the name that they call it, but it's kind of seen as translated as the mother goddess of Earth or something like that. I really should remember. I watched it a few hours ago, but there's a lot of intertitles and a lot of reading to do in the film. But they kind of see it as this kind of otherworldly goddess-like thing, the mountain, and is referenced in the intertitles how he says that, you know, we see the mountain as a mountain, as rock, you know, but they see it as something more. Maybe this is a sign that, you know, man cannot conquer Mount Everest, and it is spiritually guarded, you know. And I like that that was put in there, even if I don't agree with it. But I just felt like, well, no, you just were a bit stupid to try it in the first place, you know. It is what it is. Anyway, the Epic of Everest, great film. I'd give it maybe an 8 out of 10. It does drag at points, but otherwise, I just really enjoyed seeing the kind of slice of lifeness to it, and the music worked great with it. I thought the classical music and the images, I enjoyed the intertitles, the style of the writing engaged me, and I liked the way he kind of poetically put it at times as well. So Captain John Noll did a great job with this film. Very sad, tragic ending and stuff, but nonetheless a very cool story told very well. Now, basically, I don't know where to go next here. There's obviously there's loads of films left, but I'm thinking, where do I go, where do I go? And one thing I wanted to do was check out some of the silent films on the Wizard of Oz Blu-ray. Now I already have the Blu-ray and the TV, but this has 2 discs. So there's the film inside there, and on the second disc there's loads more special features, and there's about, well, let's get it up on the TV. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Wizard of Oz silent films included here, which I think is awesome, by the way. And so there's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz from 1910, His Majesty the Scarecrow of Oz 1914, The Magic Cloak of Oz 1914 too, The Patchwork Girl of Oz 1914, and then The Wizard of Oz 1925. Most of them are around an hour, a bit longer than an hour, and the first one is only 13 minutes, so I'm going to give that a shot. Part of me wants to watch all of them just because I'm a big fan of this film, and I'd like to just see different versions of it and go back to like 1910, 1914 and stuff. So for now, I'm just going to jump right in with The Wonderful Wizard of Oz from 1910, which I've done a bit of reading up on, and it's really interesting because no one knows who directed it. No one knows who's in it. I mean, it's that old and it's that kind of uncharted that it's kind of unconfirmed, and it's only been guessed at who made it and who's in it and that kind of stuff, which is very interesting. So I'm going to check it out. Only 13 minutes long, and then I can kind of decide where to go from there. You know, I could kind of just watch the other 4, you know, back to back. Really, it'd only take me a few hours, so I might do that anyway. On with The Wonderful Wizard of Oz from 1910. So this is very weird. We have Dorothy, I guess. It kind of just jumps in there. We have the Scarecrow and a horse and cow. I mean, look at this horse. It's just a guy in a suit, and then that's the cow, I guess. Like, I've seen, you know, obviously the classic 2-man in a horse suit thing, but this is just one person in a horse suit. Yeah. What? The lion is creepy as fuck. Look at that. Looks like he's got no eyes. And that mouth, oh my god, look, it looks like a lion zombie or something. That's just creepy, man. Alright, so that's 13 minutes of my life I'm never getting back. The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, 1910. I don't think I'll be continuing with the rest of the silent films on the Blu-ray just yet. Maybe at some point in the marathon, just to kind of see how bad silent films can be. But wow, that was, I mean, it was just jumbled, it was a mess. I mean, there was some good stuff in it, some good production design in terms of the backgrounds. The painted backgrounds are very cool. But like the man in a horse suit, the man in a cow suit. When was a horse and a cow part of Dorothy's crew in Wizard of Oz? I don't know. I've never read the books or anything. Or like my only frame of reference is this film right here. But at one point, like they get swept into Oz, and then suddenly her dog Toto is there. The first time we ever see him, he's just suddenly turns up in Oz, and then he turns from the dog that we know as Toto into a man in a dog suit, but it's like a pit bull dog, not a Toto dog. I don't know what the breed is. It's like, what? And then like the witch is called Mamba or something, and what? And yeah, it's very odd. The didn't make too much sense. It's basically just like, there's Dorothy, and then she meets this guy. Ah, people run around, and then here's the witch, and then and then oh, she knows that the witch is the water is fatal to the witch. She throws a bucket over her, and then she disappears. And then we go, and then the wizard is like, hey, the scarecrow can now be the king, and the scarecrow's like, yeah. And then the wizard flies off in a balloon, and a unnecessarily long shot of him just going up in the balloon. It's a very odd. Made very little sense. Again, no one knows who made the film, who's in the film, so who fucking cares, right? Yeah, so there's 4 other films. 2 of them I think have music, just as that one did, and 2 of them have no music at all. And I was considering watching one of them and listening to Pink Floyd's latest album, The Endless River, which is an instrumental album, just to kind of, as a little nod to the classic kind of myth that the Dark Side of the Moon syncs up with this one, The Wizard of Oz. But I don't know if I'm going to do that now. I've flipped through some of them and they just look in such bad shape, and I've looked up, you know, stories about them, and it just seems like Trouble Productions, and they seem to be included on this Blu-ray simply for just completist reasons. They had access to the print, so they decided to do it. I don't know. It looks like the 1925 The Wizard of Oz film that actually looks like it's a decent film, so I might watch that one at some point during this marathon. But for now, it was an interesting experiment, but time to move on from it and find another film, I think. Alright, I'm ready to go on with the next film, and it'll be the last film for today, which is day 5 of the marathon. It's just crazy how many I'm going through, but it will be Seventh Heaven. This is a French Blu-ray release. I believe it's the only place this film was released on Blu-ray. And there's 3 others from the filmmaker Frank Borzage, American director, I believe. It's an American film anyway. And we have Charles Farrell and Janet Gaynor in the 2 lead roles. Apparently those 2 did a lot of films together, including films with Frank Borzage. But Charles Farrell was in City Girl, F.W. Murnau's City Girl, which is a great silent film. I love that one. And Janet Gaynor is the lead in Sunrise, probably one of my favourite silent films, one of my favourite films of all time, period. And she won the Oscar in 1928 for her work in Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, Street Angel, a Frank Borzage film, and Seventh Heaven, another Frank Borzage film. So she won the Academy Award for Best Actress for 3 roles, if you don't get it by me going like this all the time. So this would be the second of her 3 Academy Award winning roles in which she won 1 award for, if that makes sense, that I'll be seeing. So I'm looking forward to checking it out. I am, I guess, a fan of silent melodrama when done right, and Charles Farrell and Janet Gaynor are 2 an actor and actress who I associate with good melodrama, so let's see what it's like and check it out. So yeah, it's about 2 in the morning. Just got done watching Seventh Heaven, and I had to talk about it, but I don't think I'm going to review it until tomorrow. In fact, I'm going to watch the last probably 45 minutes again tomorrow, I think, to give you my full opinion on it. Almost a masterpiece to me. I got sucked into the melodrama, you know, as I expected I would. But to me, it felt like the whole ending of the film, you know, which builds up over around 45 minutes, should have elicited within me an emotional reaction, not, you know, too dissimilar from the one I had last year in the first silent movie marathon when I watched Sunrise. But it didn't. It didn't grab me emotionally, and I almost felt like I was trying to push myself to feel it, but I just wasn't. And I think it's probably to do with the fact that I had an eye on where the film was ending up, how it was gonna, you know, finish, and I wasn't liking it, and I kind of got a bit annoyed at it, and, you know, put out, I guess. So maybe that the dampener on things kind of withdrew the emotion. I don't know. So now that I know how it does all end, I think that I should give the third act of the film another shot tomorrow. Maybe when I'm having breakfast, just kind of give it another run through, which I've never really done before. I can't think of any time I've done that before. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll sleep on it and I'll wake up and think I don't need to do that. But the first 40 minutes of this film, Seventh Heaven, I fell in love with it, really, really did. As I mentioned, Charles Farrell and Janet Gaynor, the two leads in the film, are both just brilliant. And I think now, Janet Gaynor, you know, who I've only seen in 2 films, Sunrise and this, already is probably one of my favourite actresses of all time. And her performance in this, unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. It's just pitch perfect, it really is. I mean, I just defy you to find any actress who can display emotion like Janet Gaynor could, particularly in this movie, you know. I don't know if I'd even say that she might have given a better performance in this than in Sunrise. You know, Sunrise is definitely a better film. But I don't know, I guess Janet Gaynor's character in Seventh Heaven had a lot more of an arc, perhaps. Well, no, I suppose her character in Sunrise does too. Well, they're equally great, judged by the fact that they both won her the Oscar for Best Actress in 1928, along with the third film called Street Angel, which is also a Frank Borzage film, also starring Charles Farrell. And in fact, Seventh Heaven was the first in 12 films that Janet Gaynor and Charles Farrell did together. So they were a very popular kind of leading couple in Hollywood. And you can see why, because their relationship in the film is wonderful. It really is. I don't know, I guess I could kind of pick a few things and say that maybe it felt like a 3-hour film told over 2 hours. I looked at the gallery. There's like a gallery of photos, like in really good quality on the Blu-ray, the French Blu-ray, released by Carlotta Films. And the photo gallery shows a lot of things on in the film. So there's obviously a lot of stuff that either didn't make the final cut or was lost, but I haven't read anything. I've been reading up about it, and I haven't read anything about like lost footage or an incomplete cut. So I think that a lot of scenes were deleted actually. So maybe that would have given it even more of a fuller picture, maybe. But at the same time, I think that what really threw me was that the first, you know, act of the film, the first 45 minutes, say, you know, there's such an idealism to it in a way. Well, I don't know, because it keeps building towards the middle when the idealism comes into it, but, and I'm being very vague here, I haven't even told you, let's get into it, I'm sitting in my bathroom, by the way, on my toilet. I'm fully dressed, but just in case you were wondering. But okay, so the story. Janet Gaynor plays a girl called Diane, and she's living a horrible life with her older sister. Their parents are, you know, presumed dead, I guess, and she lives a horrible life. Her sister's an alcoholic. She beats her. I mean, the first time we see Diane, she's on the floor getting whipped, literally. That's a point where I guess it goes over the top, and that's where the melodrama plays into it, where emotions are kind of drawn out by the extremities of situations. And I'd even say that the love story is kind of, you know, an extreme version of a love story. But sometimes, you know, that just works for me. I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm just that kind of melodramatic person that it fits me like a glove in a way. But I don't think it's done here with anything that I could call cheesiness or corniness, you know. It all felt so fucking earnest, you know, particularly Janet Gaynor's performance as Diane, you know, this withering waif of a woman who is just abused by her sister and prostituted, and well, that isn't really covered, but it's pretty much hinted that that's what's, you know, in her future. And they get into a fight, and her sister basically almost beats her to death in the street. And Charles Farrell's character, Chico, he is a street cleaner, or a sewer cleaner who becomes a street cleaner. And he kind of intervenes, and he sends, you know, Diane's cunt of an older sister off. And but he does it basically just to kind of diffuse the situation, and he kind of says to his friends how Diane is just like look at this creature, you know, what's wrong with her. Like, he's really disparaged. He says, you know, horrible things about her. And then you kind of see that maybe it's just part of his bravado. You know, he's a very, like, chest puffed out kind of, you know, getting things kind of done kind of man. And we get to kind of learn that he's probably a bit more sensitive than he likes to project himself. And so Chico and Diane, they get a little, you know, not a relationship in a romantic sense, but a relationship sparks up between them because he kind of saved her. And you know, she was so low that she tried to kill herself. He stops her, and then the police get involved about the whole incident. And so to protect her from being taken in by the police, Chico steps in and says, "No, she's my wife. She's my wife," just to kind of, you know, help her out and then let her go on her way. But the policeman's like, "Well, you know, if you're lying, you're in big trouble. We'll have someone come and check." So she has to come home with him, so that when the police arrive, she's there to kind of, you know, fit the story that she's his wife. So he says to her, "Okay, you can come back to my place, but as soon as the cops come and confirm that you're here and you live here and you're my wife, and the ruse is complete, then you're out of here. You know, nothing. You're not getting to me." He says, "You know, she cooks him breakfast one morning, and he's like, you know, all women are alike. They try and get to the men through their stomachs, and I'm not going to let you do that. As soon as that cop comes, you're gone." And the first night, you know, when she goes to his place, it's just, it's wonderful. You know, he has this part, and the film is set in Paris, and his apartment is on the top floor, the 7th floor, and I love how the way the title works into the film in that sense. But she gets to his place, and he has these 2 huge open windows that look out over Paris, and you've got the stars, and you know, just this beautiful set design. You know, it's all on sets, and it was just the sense of, I don't know, wonder and stuff. And she remarked how it's just like heaven, and he's like, "Yeah, you know, I work in the sewer, but when I come home at night, I get to see the stars." And I just love that whole section when they got back to his place at night, and he lets her sleep in his bed, and he goes and sleeps on the balcony, and she kind of learns that he's not going to be a typical man. And you know, she starts falling for him, and we don't know how he feels about her, and it goes on, and you know, they fall in love basically. And then the film just takes a complete turn. It turns into an all-out war film. He gets enlisted, he goes off, and suddenly the first half of the film, where you're all on sets, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if it had been, well, not low budget, but that it didn't cost that much, just in terms of, you know, they're just like a couple of street sets and his apartment set, which is used a lot. And then suddenly you get to this, when he goes out to war, and the Great War starts, and there's these huge battle scenes with explosions going off and just convoys of cars, and it just completely surprised me that they put so much money into this, you know, and you only see it really in the second half of the film in a way. I mean, but the sets are fantastic throughout the film, so obviously a lot of money was spent on them, but comparatively, you look at this very simple kind of, you know, drama filmed on sets, on stages, and then you have this huge on-location, you know, war battlefield sequence, or sequences even. And then you'd have these kind of, again, very serious battle scenes juxtaposed with moments of humour, and I wasn't quite sure how to take it, you know. I was just like, where's this film going? What has it turned into, you know? And it's almost like you get that idealised version of romance and love, and something more than what, you know, I mean, it's kind of, religion is brought into it in a way, and spiritualism, and what spiritualism, but just kind of they have this thing where they're going to speak to each other at 11 o'clock in the morning every day when he's off in the battlefield, and she kind of almost believes that she can hear him talking to her. And it's not spiritualism, but I guess just, you know, the idea of something a bit more than the physical plane, I guess. It's not a huge part of the film, but it's definitely something that's touched on, I guess. And yes, the whole, when he gets sent off to war, it kind of drags you out, I guess, of the idealism and the romanticism of the situation, and puts you firmly back down to reality before the end, in which things take another turn. And I don't want to talk about the end, but yeah, I mean, for me right now, it's definitely a 9 out of 10 at least. And that's another thing that I think, like, you know, I wish I wasn't one of those people who constantly thinks, right, what rating do I give this film? Is this film a 10 out of 10? Is it a 5 out of 5? And I just wish that never was part of the equation. I wish that I just watched a film and could say, yeah, it was good, it was great, it was awesome, whatever. But I always feel the need to quantify it, you know, how many points out of 10,
How many stars out of 5? You know, is it a masterpiece? Is it simply just a great film? And I need to remember sometimes that giving a film a 9 out of 10 still means that it's an amazing film. You know, and maybe I dole out the 10 out of 10s too easily. But then again, I go back to what I was saying earlier, the whole, you know, the 5 steps or the 5 kind of core elements that make film brilliant. And it's the characters, and the characters in this one were great. The story was great. The direction was great, which I haven't really mentioned, but the direction was really good. There's some great shots in this film, but not overtly. You know, it doesn't go overboard. It lets the story, you know, tell itself in a way. But there's some great moments of direction in there, and atmosphere. There's a brilliant atmosphere in it, especially in that scene in Chico's apartment when they first get back there that night, and then finally emotion. And it did get me emotionally, but that emotion kind of, the emotional reaction kind of waned off towards the end when I realised where I thought it was going. So really, it's the emotion, I think, that I'm kind of hung up on, and how it didn't punch me at the end like it should have. You know, I mean, I think about it all now. I play it back in my head like I have a Blu-ray player in my brain, and it feels like I should have reacted more, you know, emotionally to the ending of the film. So I'm going to rewatch it tomorrow morning and see what I think, and then come back on camera and then continue this whole thing. It's been a crazy ride so far, 13 films in, and I'm definitely thinking at this point that, you know, it's a lot of films to watch, and maybe I've bitten off far too much than I can chew in a way, but I've committed to it, and I am enjoying it a hell of a lot. And to see films like Seventh Heaven, you know, is for the first time on Blu-ray is awesome. The Blu-ray didn't look fantastic. It hasn't been restored to the likes of Sunrise or City Girl or, you know, The General, but I liked the kind of the print damage in a way. It made it feel special and old, and I've talked about that before, but you know, it was a very good transfer, and I'm glad that it's on Blu-ray as well. But yeah, I'll talk more about it tomorrow, and I've gone almost 15 minutes now, but yeah, I'm aware of the fact that I'm just not going to limit myself at all in this whole video series, whatever it turns out to be, whatever state that I edit it and release it in. You know, this is just me. This is raw, uncut, unedited. Well, it'll be edited, but you know, it's for the most part just my raw thoughts on a hell of a lot of film. I should go for the Guinness World Record of most films reviewed in a single video or single series, I don't know, or longest review series, because I can fucking talk for 20 minutes about every single film. It's ridiculous. But yeah, Seventh Heaven, beautiful film. I loved it, and as melodramatic as it is, I just was taken away with it, you know, every step of the way. I just didn't feel that punch that I felt I should have felt at the end. So we'll see if I wake up in the morning and watch it again and maybe feel something different. And I don't know, but I shouldn't force it on myself either. I shouldn't, because that's what I felt like I was trying to do earlier, was I was trying to force myself to get, you know, upset about it. But you know, we'll see. Anyway, so that's me signing off for the night, and I'm now gonna go to my own seventh heaven in my dreams, because I'm very tired, and it's time for my head to hit the pillow.